Thank you for tuning in. My name is Allan Karl, WorldRider. I am the host of this event, Journeys Webcast. It's Monday. It's my favorite day because I get to connect with another old friend or make a new friend. And I'm so excited, as I always am, about my guest today. I do want to just couple points of business. There is a chat room on the side there on the right sidebar. Please introduce yourself. Let us know you're tuning in. If you've got questions, you can type in your question down there. There's a little button next to where it says chat mode. You can turn that into a question mode and we'll be flagged that that's a question. If we freeze or somehow the video gets bad or the audio gets bad, you can go ahead and there's a little bar or a tab in the middle of the top of your screen. It says reconnect or problems or something like that. I can't see it. It's not on mine, but click that. That'll allow you to reconnect to the live stream. So that should be pretty good. But I want to just quickly, before I bring in David, I want to thank you so much for letting me and my guests be part of your day on these Mondays. I appreciate you, and I'm thankful for that opportunity to bring you a bit of light, love, and certainly laughter in your day. You know, I started these Journeys webcast on a whim last March, you know, as an idea to satiate my wanderlust and desire to connect with people all over the world. My passion's people. And I'd host these weekly live streams where, you know, a very random set of guests were travelers, entrepreneurs, vintners, chefs, musicians, authors, speakers, and just ordinary people living extraordinary lives where we can come together for about an hour of storytelling, inspiration, idea sharing, and of course, the most important one, connection. Now, more than 30 episodes later, we're both still here. So thank you. How's everybody doing? How are you feeling? It's been our strange ride, hasn't it? It's been our own little journey. You know, to be honest, today I'm feeling a bit guilty. It's 72 degrees outside. It's sunny. You know, I know so much of this country is in a deep freeze. Some people forced to boil water, huddle around heaters. They're challenged just to find the basic necessities. And all of this is at no fault of their own. We're in a crisis, a lot of crises. Certainly a climate crisis, but there's no pointing fingers. It's playing the blame game is just useful. But yet here we are in crisis, climate, corona, and certainly confidence, or what my guest today would say is more trust. Well, to help us better understand how important it is for us to trust, and not just the business, not government or family and friends, but to trust ourselves. I've got the best person in the country, perhaps in the world, who can help and show us how. You know, I met David about 5 years ago in New York City at a National Speakers Association event where he spoke about his journey and his passion for sharing his message about trust. His book had just hit the Wall Street Journal's bestseller book. But David Horsager is the CEO of Trust Edge Leadership Institute. He's a global authority on helping leaders and organizations become the most trusted in their industries. He's the best-selling author of The Trust Edge, inventor of the Enterprise Trust Index, director of one of the nation's foremost trust studies, the Trust Outlook. And he's the trust expert in residence at High Point University. He's also the host of the Trusted Leader Show, where he sits down and chats with influential leaders all over the world. David's work's been featured in prominent publications such as Fast Company, Forbes, and the Wall Street Journal. He's advised leaders and delivered life-changing presentations on 6 continents. He's got one up on me, so this guy's a traveler. The audience range from people at FedEx, Toyota, and global governments to the New York Yankees, and yes, even the Department of Homeland Security. Join me in a big welcome for David Horsager. David, so glad to see you.
Wow, that was sounding pretty good. I need to read that bio a little more.
I was going to ask you, how did I do? Yeah.
Oh my goodness. No, it's a treat. It's a treat to be on with you, and absolutely, that's what I think about. Talk about research on is definitely trust. I believe a lack of it's your biggest expense, and that's the greatest value you can have. So,
yeah,
it's a treat.
Yeah. So I want you to know we're going to be talking about a lot of links, and we're going to interact with people in the room. There'll be people then watching this later on the replay on YouTube. So unfortunately, you're going to have to just enjoy our chat. But any links we mention are going to be in the description right below here. So if you are watching YouTube, links to a lot of cool things, including books and resources that David's put together, in the description, and I'll be putting them up here. I'm kind of curious. I'm just going to throw up a quick poll to see how many people, if this is the first time they've joined us on the live stream. So, and we've got Lee Marvin from Tucson. I like it. You got weather like mine, and Chris. So yes, I know it's so cold upstate. So thank you for tuning in today. We're in a trust crisis, David, and you were a really early adopter on this trust message, something that should have been a part of our lexicon in business and relationships for a lot more than the work you've been doing. How do you define a trust crisis, and how did we get here?
First of all, back when I was doing the research a couple decades ago, almost nobody, when I did the, in grad work, you start by doing an LIA or research of research, and there was almost no research on trust and leadership, business, that kind of thing. Now it's all over the place. People are interested. I mean, Deloitte, Accenture, they're all writing papers, the big, and they're a lot of great things have happened. Forbes made Trust the Business Word of the Year. Great place to work. Just put trust the number one metric as a great place to work ahead of engagement, which we've been arguing forever. The only way to get engagement is increased trust. So, I believe as much as ever, a lack of trust is the biggest expense you have. Everything of value is built on trust. I think another interesting thing that you just said, and that is we're finding ourselves in a crisis of confidence now. Okay, but let's go back. When I was working on that first book, The Trust Edge, The Trusted Leader comes out in a month, but Trust Edge. Funny enough, World Economic Forum in China, all the greatest leaders got together and they said, what's our biggest crisis? Remember, this was the whole economic meltdown in the world. And they said, is it financial? Is this? And they came together and they said, you know what? It's a trust crisis. And over a decade later, last year at the World Economic Forum, before COVID, they said, what's our biggest crisis now? Oh, it's a trust crisis. So people say, they're saying it's this crisis of confidence, this crisis of it's like, David, your work is so timely. I agree, but it's timeless. It's always the core issue. If you can change, what we found is if you can change the level of trust, you change influence, leadership, time, cost, everything else. So one more point about crises is the one thing we have now is a huge opportunity. Your greatest opportunity to build trust faster than any other time is not first interaction. Your greatest opportunity to build trust the fastest is in crisis. How you respond in crisis, you can enormously gain market share and trust by how you respond in crisis. You think of when was George W. Bush, if you're listening in the U.S., when was George W. Bush the most trusted as president? He was most trusted and highest rated the week after 9/11. How he responded in crisis was his highest ratings. And that's the same for you and me. If we're in the boardroom and people are throwing clipboards and swearing, you have an immense opportunity to build trust by how you respond in crisis.
Yeah, you write about that in the book, and you also talk about that in your keynotes and in your programs. And as I was refreshing myself and going back, I was actually I went back to your book and downloaded the audio book, which, by the way, David narrates, which is awesome. And you talk about this, how the opportunity to really gain, build, and earn trust in crisis. And I look at a couple things that have happened just in the last week or two. Let's talk about Ted Cruz, for example. I mean, how did he go wrong? I mean, he had, like you say, the biggest opportunity to really gain that trust and gain that confidence of his people. But what did he do wrong? I mean, not just the trip. What could have he done? What's a lesson?
I'd rather talk about Tom Brady's trust. I'll tell you what. Basically, wow. we judge trust on 8 things. Okay, there's 8 things. It's a metric. It's measurable. It's been revalidated. This comes out of my grad work, but it's been revalidated this last year by an outside university. So you can think about Mr. Cruz. You can think about anybody, but they can lose it in several different ways. But clarity, was I clear? People trust the clear and they mistrust or distrust the ambiguous or the overly complex, right? Or if they're hiding something. Compassion. Was it caring? Did I feel cared about in this? It matters. Character. Okay, we can argue that one. Okay.
Yep.
Character. Did I do what's basically we trust those that do what's right over what's easy. We have a framework for how do you incentivize character. A lot of people actually in their sales initiatives, they lose trust because they de-incentivize what they actually want, which is higher character in how they incentivize programs. Or you can talk about the places we've gone, bribery in East Africa is in fact not incentivizing what they actually want as a country in certain cases. So competency, where they commented, this is why I might trust Carl. I might trust you to take my kids to the ball game because of your character, but not give me a root canal, right? So you got to stay competent in the area you want to be trusted. Connection, this willingness to connect and collaborate with others. If I'm not willing to connect and collaborate with the right people, if I'm siloing in an organization or, Ted Cruz, it doesn't matter. That's going to be an issue. Contribution is the results pillar. If I don't get the results I expected or asked for, whether it is, infrastructure in a state or something else, if I'm not getting the right results, so we're trusted on results. You have to deliver results. That surgeon might be the kindest surgeon I ever met. They might have high character, but we got to amputation and cut off the wrong leg. We got a problem. I want to trust your results, right? And then the final pillar is consistency. And of course, these are C words, but they represent funnels of research, right? So that was just for clarity. It's not some motivational triteness. It's funnels of research. Consistency is trusted. Whatever you do consistently. This is like, if you're late all the time, I will, in fact, for good reason, trust you to be late. So, just so we're on the same page, this is how we're measuring, Ted Cruz or anybody else. We're okay. Well, that's a character issue. Oh, that's a clarity issue. Oh, that was a consistency issue.
Yeah. In fact, I'm going to put this slide up here. This is David just went through the 8 pillars of trust, which he talks about, especially in his new book that comes out end of March, I guess. Trusted Leader. You could maybe share with us a little bit. I'm going to leave this slide up there so people can get a visual on this. Is to get to talk to me about. Actually, now I'm just thinking I got so many things I want to ask you, but I want I haven't read the new book because it's not out, but I want you to talk to us about Ethan, because you use a parable, you use a story. Right? I'm a storyteller. Right. Yep. You're a storyteller. There's no better way than we can put these 8 pillars up there, but in the way that you can really grab some true conceptual understanding of that. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, what we learned in that first book, Trust Edge, is a great applicable book. That was the book I wrote over a decade ago, right? But what we learned is people don't necessarily want 365-page book that came out original grad work or whatever, research, too much research. It's very easy to read too. I mean, I took that book, but basically this book, what the publisher and many people were asking, they said, I want to get the idea. I thought I knew it all about trust. I want to understand, you say trust is more complex than I think at first. I want to grasp that idea, think differently about trust. And so we get in a story, in a really cool, fun, engaging parable. I get them to think differently. I thought I had trust or I didn't. Turns out you can earn it every day. I thought transparency is trust, isn't it? Isn't transparency everything? Transparency is trust? No. Some of your kids are so transparent on social media, I don't trust them for a second, because confidentiality is also trusted. So this parable really helps us shift thinking about trust and see the case for trust, how trust affects the bottom line, time, retention, attrition, innovation, the core issue, how it's the leading indicator, how the number one question everybody is asking is not, do I like you? People say they work with people they like. That's not true. I got friends I like a lot. I wouldn't go into business with them in a million years, So it's about trust is the core issue. And then the 8 pillar framework that you had shown is basically the 8 pillars, because it's based in research, are the same as the first book. But where we go with that second book is I give now, a decade later, actionable takeaways they can use tomorrow morning to build that pillar as a leader. And that leader could be a mom or dad. It could be a garbage collector, anybody that influences anybody. I give specific takeaways. I give the idea I used under one of the pillars to lose 50 pounds in 5 months in 2011. right before I think I met you. I give a pillar that people, a simple idea of how people can have an appreciative work environment. I give these simple tools. So it's a really fun book that's gained, I think it already went to broke the top 100 on Amazon just in pre-orders, which is kind of fun. But it's this parable gets the point across to see how the root cause is always a trust issue. And then this second half is actually not a parable. It's just takeaways from those. But here's what you can do. Here's what you can do. And it gives them actionable tools they can use tomorrow to solve for those pillars and build those pillars that actually are the root issue. And we believe, I hope without ego, I actually believe now, working around the globe with global governments, pro sports teams, that you can solve every organizational and leadership issue against these 8. It doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean I do it perfectly. I don't. I let everybody know I'm not perfect at any of these. But I will tell you, when you have this language, you can solve against these, and it gives tools people can use.
Yeah, I just put up a link in the offer column over there. David and his team have put together, and this will be again in the description below for you on YouTube, which is a webinar on this actual message and some free downloadable resources. So if you click on that, bookmark that link on the sidebar, you can learn a lot more about the massive amount of work David and his team have done. So check into that. I think this is a good time. I want to play a little video because not only are you a best-selling author and the leading expert in the country in trust, you're also a Hall of Fame speaker. You have been at this. That's how we connected. So I'd like to show a little bit of your message and how you do this on stage. So once this goes, I want to turn off our microphones just because we get that. Okay, so here's David.
Your biggest issue might not be what you think it is. It's always a trust issue. Everybody's asking about you. Is not, do I like you? It is, can I trust you? It doesn't matter what the problem appears to be. We've seen it in the research, and we've seen it in the organizations we've worked with around the world. The real problem always comes down to trust. And the most important question of all is, from this day forward, how? If you want to change something, you've got to ask how until you will do it. If you haven't been to a rodeo for a while, here's how it works. First half of the rodeo, the cowboys and cowgirls rope things. Second half of the rodeo, they get bucked off of things. In the middle, they let the locals get involved. They call it mutton busting. For those of you that don't know what this is where they let 5 to 8-year-old kids see how long they can last riding a big Suffolk sheep. I don't know why. I looked down at my 5 and 8-year-old at the time, and they are looking at me with eyes of terror. Vanessa is one of the last to go. She's the lightest kid in her class, littlest kid in her class. I said, Vanessa, you can't do it like that. Vanessa, you got to take those dangly 8-year-old legs. It was her birthday that day. She just turned 8. I said, Vanessa, you got to take those dangly 8-year-old legs. You got to wrap them around the belly. You got to pinch your heels as tight as you can. Vanessa, you got to lay down. You got to velcro your belly to the wall. You got to wrap your arms around it. You got to dig your fingers into the wall. And whatever you do, Vanessa, don't let go. I'm a great dad. They open the bull gate. This little girl, she's holding on. People start, can you believe it? Look at the little girl. She's cruising across the arena. The clowns come out. Little girl, you can let go now. She will not let go. I walk out into the arena. I pick my daughter off. She grabs onto my neck. We're in the middle of the arena with people cheering. And I'll never forget what she said in my ear that night. Daddy, why'd the clowns say let go? You said never let go. She was committed. And she trusted herself. Think she was scared?
I bet you're scared sometimes. As a board member or parent, I am. But you and I have got to hold on. We're in the greatest industry with the greatest opportunity for the future that ever was. And we've got to build these pillars in ourselves if we ever want to be trusted by our kids, our teachers, our students, or each other, and especially ourselves.
Trust is a confident belief in a person, a product, and an organization. And when I confidently believe in you, everything changes. Because at the end of the day, everything of value is built on one thing: trust. I think your volume's off.
Didn't I tell you that was going to happen?
Yeah.
Didn't I say that? This is all the time when I do these webcasts. When I play a video, I always forget. I'm not trusting myself enough to remember.
Oh man, that's good.
So
all good.
Yeah, it is. So you speak in front of these large groups. You work in small groups on actionable items to build trust. I remember something that you mentioned in your book, and I think it's an important message about where trust in terms of maybe employee retention in some of our organizations. You say that research has shown that the number one reason people leave their job is not because they're going for more money, right? Talk about that, because this is a great.
Yeah. The latest research, and we put out, I mentioned this, and we'll give it to everybody free. And I think if you want it, if you get the book, actually, I think you get a whole 72 videos and a whole masterclass. But the research, you can just go through your site and the stuff you put at the bottom, or Trust Edge or trustoutlook.com. But we're putting out one of the biggest annual studies, I think the biggest out of North America, even though it's a global study on trust and leadership. Year to year, we find the same thing. Actually, Gallup found this the last several years also. Number one reason people leave an organization is not being noted for notable work or not being appreciated. That's that comes under the compassion pillar. How we show we care it matters. And when we talk about compassion, we've noticed there are 4 ways that people really feel compassion in the workplace. We call it the laws of compassion, LAWS. Listening, and this is global, by the way. Listening, people that feel listened to, even though in America, I might have to listen to someone by looking someone in the eye, and in the Middle East, it might be the most trusted way, might be not looking in the eye. Still, it's listening. The A stands for appreciate, the W stands for wake up and be present, and the S stands for serve selflessly. But that appreciation, nobody gets enough of it. And I'm not talking about giving every kid a blue ribbon for doing nothing. That actually is not working. But I am talking about noticing when people do something and appreciating people. And that just keeps coming back as one of the reasons for high attrition over pay and a host of other things. They want to be noted. They want to be a part of a team where they're appreciated. And that means they're using their gifts. They feel like they're able to do their best. So that's definitely a truth from the research.
Awesome. Chris, who's tuned in, he says, trust is like integrity, isn't it? And also like virginity. You lose it once.
Well, that's a good statement. Certainly, Chris. I will say that trust, integrity is a part of trust, but it's not everything. So as an example, I think I mentioned this already. Yeah, I might trust Carl to take my kids to the ball game because of integrity. I may not trust him to give me a root canal because of competency. So this is the big finding in our original research that's been so important to organizations around the world and building high trust teams is you actually have to have all 8 to have this thing we call the trust edge or a trusted leader. So you have to stay competent in that area. You integrity is, and that was a fun quote, Chris, and I think that there's a ton of truth to what he said, of course. I'm just saying integrity is very important, but it's basically that hits the character pillar, and there's actually even more to it. When I often think about this, I thought when I started the research, I thought, I'll just be integrity, just character. But it turns out there's a lot more. If I don't if I have character but I don't, or integrity, I don't have results. If I have this and I don't have consistency, inconsistent character, you know, and so forth. So that's why there's all 8.
Yeah. I wanted to, you mentioned something a bit ago, and my ear is, since we've been doing this, my ear is always on the ground to topics or events that relate to my guests on this webcast. And Spencer Cox, who used to be the lieutenant governor of Utah, now he's governor, just got sworn in a few weeks ago. He gave a speech, and he seems like he could possibly be a Horsager disciple, because he had developed a plan as a lieutenant governor based on trust. And he says, and he's got his own, he doesn't have 8 pillars, he needs some more, but he says that competency and transparency equal trust. Now, you just mentioned, transparency can't sit alone. They're like your kids on social media. You don't trust that. Yeah. Talk about the role of trust in government, and is the governor of Utah doing the right thing?
Well, I know we're doing a lot of work in Utah, and I have several certified coaches in Utah, trusted certified coaches, which are doing great work. I can't speak to being overly familiar or not with exactly what his work is doing, what everything he's doing. In fact, I'm more focused on a bunch of governments in East Africa, even over some work that we're doing, that stuff that's happening here. So I'm sometimes less familiar here.
Right. He was specifically speaking to COVID and the vaccination drive.
So let me just, to be fair to him, transparency and competency, those absolutely are true. So just because I made fun of being overly transparent, like some kids are on Facebook, that doesn't mean it's not true. In fact, I'll give you another statistic. Last year's study, 92% of people would trust their senior leader more if they were more transparent about their mistakes. So what I want from leadership is, I do want transparency and I want competency, no doubt about it. So I would affirm that. I, of course, also do want character and I want clarity, but I think he's in many, many ways right. I think it's interesting that data point that I just gave you on 92% of people would trust their senior leader more if they're more transparent about their mistakes. Many people think, oh, it'd be transparent, but actually about their mistakes. Like, I remember when this hit home for me, my daughter, when she was just first a teenager, now she's, going to college and everything, but she was 13 or so. And I remember we were on a walk and she said, "Dad, you wouldn't understand." I don't know if she was thinking about boys or academics or what, but she said, "You wouldn't understand because you're perfect." And I knew I had a problem because I knew it's great to be their hero at 3 years old, but at 13, 14, if she still thinks I'm perfect, something she's not seeing, something that everybody else sees. My wife certainly sees. And I think in those days, our business had taken a jump. I'm flying off in jets, sometimes even private, whatever, and get picked up by a sedan. So she didn't know the time that, I lost all the family's money, buying a business right before she was born, and we lost everything or whatever. And so I started actually in thinking, she can't share with me. This is a problem. So I started sharing, when we go on our weekly walks, I would start sharing with her mistakes I'd made, places I blew it, all these kind of things. What happened to our relationship? Just changed forever, And I see all these kind of leaders that I sit next to these days, sometimes presidents of countries, sometimes presidents of companies, and they have imposter syndrome. They're scared to death they're going to be found out. And in fact, if they would just be more transparent about their mistakes, we connect on mistakes, not on the great awards we've made, So there's a part of transparency. So I think when you talk about government, I'm sorry, I got off the rails there a little bit, but the government, I mean, if they were more transparent, in many ways, they would be way more trusted, So there's a bottom line truth there. Transparency is a big part of trust. Lencioni, my friend, would say it's the foundation. I would argue with that a little bit, that there's more to it. So transparency and competency, man, I'll take that over most of what we're getting anywhere in the country. So,
interesting. I want to play another video, and I want to talk a little bit about, as individuals, I hate the word consumer. I like to look at the word as a human, but as humans, we build loyalty. Before I started traveling around the world on a motorcycle, I was a branding strategist, marketing branding. I was a messaging, guru. And this is something that faces companies so often, and doing the right thing, which is such as building those pillars, can maintain the trust that they've earned. But as Chris was saying, how easy it is to lose it. Watch this. This is a quick video. I'll turn my mic off again.
But we begin with that breaking news from Colorado. A mid-air emergency on board a Boeing 777 passenger plane, an engine failing shortly after takeoff. New images showing the plane in the air, smoke trailing behind and coming from the right engine. Pieces of the plane raining to the ground in a Denver suburb, littering an athletic field. One piece puncturing a hole in the roof of a home you see right there. And take a look. This piece landing in the front yard of a home, missing it by just a matter of feet. People on the ground say that they heard a loud explosion, then saw smoke trailing from the plane, the pilot calling a mayday before a white-knuckle return to the airport.
Just as Boeing is getting the 737 MAX back into the fleet, this happens just 3 days ago. This is taking a big hit to the trust in that company. There's no question. You're a consultant. You've worked with like the East African, Middle Eastern leaders. You're sitting down now with whether it's the CEO of Boeing or their board or a company similar that may be faced with just getting hammered by crisis after crisis. You mentioned at the very beginning of this webcast how that's when you are in crisis. Here's Boeing in crisis. What should they do?
I'll tell you what's not. Let me just tell you how people think they rebuild with trust with the apology. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't start with an apology and be sorry and all that. But I woke up to this little idea when a CEO from the Netherlands came to America. He'd been here a couple of weeks. And I said, what do you notice different in America? And he said, he was working with a certain team. Thankfully, this wasn't my company, but it was his experience here. He said, well, it seems like in America, you got a bunch of lying apologizers. He said, they all say they're sorry and they don't mean it. This guy comes into work every day, says, I'm sorry I'm late, but he's late every day. So the bottom line is, I'll tell you what I'm not saying you don't need to apologize. You do need to start there, but you never, ever, ever rebuild trust on an apology. Now, we have a 15-step process in the book of how a big company might approach this. You see companies that have done it well over time. British Petroleum, amazing after the oil spill and all the work they did, both in natural resources and other ways they went forward to rebuild trust, and ones that haven't. And I won't name those names of ones that didn't take the right steps. But there's 15 steps. But I will tell you at the bottom line, whether you're an individual who broke trust with your friend or you're you're a company, it ends with you have to make and keep a new commitment. Mm-hmm. So they have to see it. Now we need more time with Boeing. There's trust broken. It's going to cost in the bottom line. It's going to cost in market share. It's going to cost in a whole lot of ways. And that's how it is. So the only way, they have to make and keep a new commitment so they have to make a commitment they can keep. Might be little ones and then bigger ones, but that's a big problem because, the final pillar of trust is consistency. And I'll tell you what we don't want is inconsistency. A funny side story, since we're both travelers and you're the guru of it. My scariest flight was San Francisco to MSP. And of the flight, I used to, 200 flights a year. I don't know, 20 years, not quite that many on average, maybe, but it was a lot of flights a year for the last 21 years. Yeah. And the scariest flight I had was, and it was over that exact airport, Denver, and we lost an engine, and we had an emergency landing, and they skidded it, and had the trucks out and everything, and I actually asked the pilot later, is that would have something about it. He said, we were lucky we landed there because of the longest airport in the country. If we would have had to do that on one engine and land safely in Chicago, it might have been a different story. So anyway, that airport, I'm kind of started getting skittish about Denver too.
Wow. That it's hilarious. As you mentioned that, my most scary airline, was also a flight leaving MSP for Rapid City. And we got about 2 minutes into the air, and there's this loud clank, and you next thing you know, the pilot comes on. He's saying, we need to check some things out here. We're turning around and going back to MSP. And in the end, there was nothing, I don't remember exactly what it was, but that whole another 2 minutes turning around and going back, your heart goes like, whoa, I can't imagine an engine out.
People were crying. It was quite something. Yeah.
Hey, I want to, I got another video to show you in a minute, but before we do that, I want you to talk about a tale of two stands, as I like to put it. And this is not like Afghanistan and Pakistan and Kyrgyzstan, but stands, like a veggie stand and a donut stand. And you've got a great story. One of these happens in the middle of nowhere in Minnesota, which is okay, that works. But now in busy, bustling New York,
right?
This is a great story. Please share.
Well, you're not going to show the video of it, or are you?
No.
Okay. So I'll tell you the New York one, because just to be fair, I started telling the story of the farm stand, which is the same idea, because that was my own experience. But in the first book, I put the New York stand because it was a friend of mine's experience, and I give him credit if you see it in the book. It's basically Stephen Milno. He basically watched this guy. Name was Ralph, or that's his name to everybody, as he, in New York City, in Manhattan, and with permission, I share this story. Basically, he had a coffee and donut stand, and in New York City, and he has the donuts and coffee out there, and you basically make your own change and pay what you owe. And he was able to, because of trust, speed everything up, not employ more people. And, I tell the story in a lot longer version, but the bottom line is, because he built the stand on trust, he was, costs went down, time sped up, and loyalty increased. And you might say, well, I bet some people ripped him off. Probably. He more than made up for it on tips alone, because he built his stand on trust. He had long lines. They just paid their own through they just throw an extra buck in. They would just do it. Boom, take a donut and go. Take a donut and go. And that's the quick story. Is this little stand built on trust outsold all the other stands in New York City for a long time. It's no longer there.
No longer there. Well, he's probably retired on all of that trust that he earned.
Yeah, and some say he couldn't. It actually got so bad in an area. But for in any case, this is another thing, right? About trust is like trust. If you can have it, it's the greatest advantage you can possibly create. Just so you know, and all your listeners know, this does not mean I believe we should trust everyone. There are good reasons not to trust. I don't trust my flight to be on time. I've had experience, right? I don't trust that boy with my daughter. I was a boy once. There's I don't trust the people that say things they don't mean, like just trust me or whatever. So there are good reasons not to trust. But where you create it, as a leader, as an individual, as a brand, as an organization, as a country, you just created the greatest bottom line and impact, the greatest competitive advantage you can possibly have.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you talk about your marketing. I got to hit this. The only way to amplify a marketing message, there's only one way. You have to increase trust in the message. There's only one way. It's never a leadership issue. The only reason I follow a leader or not is trust, unless it's a dictator. Unless it's a commodity, it's not a sales issue. The only reason I buy from someone or not has something to do with trust. So it's the diversity. We got a lot of diversity issues today, right? The only way, the biggest Harvard study shows, diversity on its own pits people against each other unless you increase trust. So you have to deal with the trust issue. How do I get more learning in a classroom? You and I speak a lot around the world. There's only one way to increase. If your kids go to class, there's only one way to increase learning in a classroom. You have to either increase trust in the content, the teacher, or the psychological safety, the trust of the surroundings. So if you don't deal with the trust issue, you're not dealing with the root issue. And when you do, you can see the impact, like I have on page 20 of the first book, that shows, okay, trust goes up, outcomes, morale, retention, productivity go up, otherwise costs, time, cost to market, whatever, go down. When they deal with the trust issue, you actually have a chance of dealing with attrition, retention, whatever your core issue is.
Yeah. Is there, as humans on this journey of life, what's the risk of trusting too much? Maybe having our expectations too high. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's clear, and it's as big as it is in that situation. So people have someone, some lady come up to me after and say, I love this trust stuff. I just want to trust that guy again. Well, you should, for whatever he did to you last time, because you don't just trust people just to trust them. You have to trust them based on consistency, based on these pillars. But you can be. This is why most of my work I have one chapter in the first book on extending trust to other and with discernment and all that, how you do it. But almost all of my work is around how do I become most trusted? How do I build trust, build these 8 pillars so that I can gain this advantage of the trust edge? Not how much should I trust others. You can rate others based on these 8 pillars, but I want to create companies, organizations, marketing, all these things so that I can gain this advantage. And that's where we spend most of our time.
That's a good point for me to kick off this next little video. Let's watch this and we'll talk about it on the other side.
The only way to build trust with yourself is to make and keep a commitment. You know, people sometimes ask me about the weight loss when I lost over 50 pounds in 5 months. And I think, one of the many things I did to try to lose that weight was I made a commitment. It wasn't a bet, just a commitment. And the commitment was to my staff. The commitment was, if I'm not at my high school weight by May 1st, I'll give you $2,500. My wife was not excited about this idea, but I knew I had to make a commitment. Now, what's the problem if I wouldn't have kept that commitment? Well, I would have lost trust in myself. So making and keeping little commitments that you will keep, that's the step to start trusting yourself more. And when you trust yourself more, you start to build that muscle so that you can trust others, build trust in your team, build trust in your organization, build trust in your family or anywhere else. But in order to build trust with others, you have to start to be able to trust yourself. So picking some little thing that you can make as a commitment that you will keep will help you start to build more trust with yourself.
Real important point of obviously in the commitment side of the commitment pillar in your work there, but trusting yourself without that you can't expect people to trust you as well, right?
And the problem is, if you can't trust, you find people that don't trust themselves at all. They have a hard time to building it on teams or anywhere else. Think about this. There's an old truth you probably heard: love your neighbor as yourself. Well, that goes back and says, well, that means if I don't love myself at all, I'm going to have a hard time loving others. And wouldn't you agree? People that don't love themselves at all, how fun are they to be around? Not very.
Right.
So it's the same with trust. If you don't trust yourself at all, you're going to have a really hard time building it with others. I mean, that's why you see people having so many relationship issues over and over and over and over and over. They don't trust themselves and they don't trust others, and they just breed that, right? So you have to build the muscle of building these, keeping commitments with yourself so that you can trust yourself and you can believe that in others and build that in others. And, that's a big deal. People that don't love themselves don't love others well. People that don't trust themselves don't trust others well.
So this is a good segue. I've never done this before on the webcast, but I'm going to play you a very small, short clip of one of my keynotes, a little part of it, because I am a Horsager disciple as well, and this is relevant. So watch this. We'll talk about it on the other side.
Oh, you're off. Oh.
Well, I'm going to share with you some inspiring stories about an extraordinary motorcycle adventure around the world. You're going to soon see it's really less about the motorcycle than it is about what the motorcycle represents. Like being open. Open to new experiences. Open to change. Open to possibilities. It's also about having a broader, even wider perspective, about seeing things differently, seeing things new, maybe expanding our worldview. Now, it's also about risk-taking, yeah? I mean, motorcycles, like so many things in our lives, can be dangerous. But without risk, where is reward? And it's also about trust, okay? Certainly about trusting each other and others on the road, but it's also about trusting ourselves. Trusting ourselves to be confident and not to be afraid, especially if you ever find yourself at a fork in the road. You know, maybe facing a major life-changing decision or event. Because it's often here we feel like maybe we've come to the end of a road. But it's also here we need to trust ourselves to take a moment. Stop. Ask questions. And wonder, what if? What if I did go down that road over there? What experiences might I find over there? Or what if I changed directions completely and explored unknown territories, even tried something new? What possibilities might I find down that road? Ask questions, wonder what's possible.
So I wanted, and I want to speak specifically to things you say, and I, you know, because we are in this wild world of change, and in my keynote I talk about, you know, when you're faced with something that's uncomfortable, such as change, you know, how you need to really, you know, grab it by the horns, or as I like to say, by the handlebars. But change does represent an opportunity as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Change represents an opportunity. By the way, this is just change is just like crisis. I love what you said there, by the way. But change is just like crisis. You have a massive opportunity to build trust faster in change and crisis than any other time. Because how you respond when people are a little bit nervous, or a little bit worried, a little bit whatever. I also agree about the risk. I say this, one of my slides in one of my talks is trust is always a risk.
Okay, that's
so trusting yourself. You might fail. I failed and had to get up back on the horse many times, right? In your case, motorcycle, but I grew up on the farm. So, you know, I've trusted others and they failed me. I've trusted my kids. And they've gone the wrong direction. They've hopefully learned, and then they move. You know, so trust is, you got a team. Trust is always a risk. So you do have to take wise risks. But that's why I spend most of our time, you know, with what can I do to be more trusted? What can I do to work on myself, my own company, my brand, my organization, my whatever? But can't remember what else I was going to say there. But
yeah, well, it's change is like crisis. Yeah, as you say, it's feeling that maybe you're exhausted and you just don't know what to do. And this is a time where you need to build trust in yourself. You know, you did. Yeah. You know, we've all been locked down. We've been in our own COVID crisis. We got more C's: COVID, Corona, crisis, competence. I mean, we've got plenty. I find that. That you did a video where you went through a series of 21 or so things that you may have learned during this time where we're not really traveling as much as we did. We certainly, and we'll come back and speak of this, how the speaking business and the event business has changed forever. Speaking of change, a C, but you went through a series of things. One of them you said was important to write things down, to journal, which I think is an incredible thing. I try to journal every day. I even have these reminders come up, and sometimes I get mad at them and I just say cancel, but I try to do that. But one of those things that's doing for us by journaling, and by this other video I want to play of you, is certainly expanding ourselves, right? A bit is trying to make ourselves a bit more relevant by staying in tune. And that speaks to one of the pillars. Let me play this short clip and we'll talk about it on the other side.
And yet today, the average number of hours an American spends watching entertaining TV. This isn't email. It used to be TV, but it's entertaining screen time, right? Usually garbage. Doesn't make you much better, right? Average number of hours annually is how many hours? That's right, 1,287. 1,287! You could learn a language a year.
And the average number of books an American reads, not annually, but in their lifetime, after their formal education, whether that ended at a high school degree or a PhD, average number of books an American reads in their lifetime, over 100 pages. Goodnight Moon does not count, parents. Average number of books annually is how many? I mean, in their lifetime after their education is how many? I'm a bit of a 9 out of 50, and a bit of a 15 out of 40. Ladies and gentlemen, the average number is 1. What's that mean? Most people are reading none, because you're bringing the average up. I have a brother that reads 52, one a week. You have, this is, as you can imagine, it's a great time to be an author. And there are other ways than books, but you have got to, if you want to be vibrant, you want to be a leader, you've got to be reading, being mentored. You've got to be learning and staying.
You've got to be learning. You've got to be reading. You know, I when I saw that, I was stunned. I didn't know the data, you know, and how wherever it is to today, it's probably even worse in terms of the screen time people are spending. And reading on your screen doesn't count. Let's be sure with that. Personal growth and relevancy to building trust. You could speak to that in one of your pillars for sure.
Absolutely, the competency pillar. Hey, if you're leading the same way you were 20 years ago, I don't trust you. If you're a school teacher and you're teaching the same way you were 30 years ago, I don't trust you. If you're selling the same way you were 10 years ago, I don't trust you. You got to stay fresh and relevant and capable. You got to be competent, and that's really critical today. You lose freshness every day. You're not pouring in. You know, if in any area of life, here's a scientific truth. Input leads to output, right? So in business, we say input leads to output. In first law of thermodynamics, the great German physicist found energy went in, same amount of energy that comes out. Psychology, thoughts lead to desires, lead to actions. Physiologically, eat a bad bowl of chili. Input, output. I mean, or something where some of us have around the world. So psychological, even theology, you reap what you sow, or the farming, you could say that. So there's always input, output. So you're going to get the input, just like in my body. If I don't put the right things in, I don't get the right things out. Just like in my marriage, if I don't put the right things in, I don't get the right things out. Just like it's the same in my mind, my audience, those boards that I advise, those leaders that I serve, input equals output. And if I'm not staying fresh for them, they're not getting fresh, good output. And you and I have seen this in the speaking business. I mean, you see people are still the same way, the same talk, the same whatever they were a long time ago. And that was a doggone good speech. It's just no longer good. It's no longer good. Now, that doesn't mean you're a different expert. I've only been an expert in one thing. I'm only an expert in trust, so I'm always going to talk about trust. There might be a story or two I tell that are the same forever, but my fresh content, it brings it to new life, my fresh research, my fresh whatever, how I apply it tomorrow, how I apply it through crisis. That was the whole thing of the 21 things I learned in crisis, or we're working on something now about how to deal with pivots. How do you build trust in pivot and all that? Because there's different ways of looking at this now, but it's the same. It might be the same framework or whatever, but yeah, you got to stay fresh. But in relationships, romantic ones or just friendships, you don't spend time with someone, it's losing freshness all the time unless you keep it up, right? And keep putting input in. So, you don't read a book, you don't get your PhD and be done with it and stay smart.
Yeah, I love the fact he's talking about that. If you don't spend time with them, you're not, you can't expect that friendship to go on. I wrote an article a few years ago called the Biggest Gift. And essentially it was just that a Hallmark card, a knick-knack, or this is nothing compared to going and spending time, because that's one of the resources that is limited. You can always find cards, always find money, but you can't find time again once it passes. So I love that. I'm going to go to our chat on the side. Some of the people in. Michael Madison Traeger is tuning in from Palm Springs, not too far from me, and he makes a point. We were talking about Boeing at the time. He says that it's he would argue it's not a Boeing issue, that it's a Pratt & Whitney issue, and a United issue, meaning the airline. but the media tends to be a little bit alarmist about such things. But what are the optics there? How do you see that?
Well, I think certainly, number one, I'm glad that I'm flying from Minneapolis because it's the best airport in the country, and Delta's hub here, and I'm grateful for Delta because overall, there's a whole lot of things they do differently than United that if that's nothing to do with the airplane. But
yeah, and they're the only airline still to this day blocking middle seats, by the way.
Exactly. That's right. And they've stayed consistent, and they're fantastic. Within the guideline, of course, you can go on Singapore Airlines or something better in a different way, but out of the U.S., how I'm just grateful. I think basically the problem is, and the truth is, it's a United and a Boeing and a Pratt & Whitney issue. So it's not, everybody's linked together. We trust, it's kind of like you were in the car when the guy drank too much, you part of allowed it or whatever, you're in the car when by association. And there's some good to that. I mean, frankly, everybody has to take responsibility. So Boeing has to take responsibility for the engines they're putting on. Pratt & Whitney has to take responsibility. United has to take responsibility. So anyway, I just think in a basic level, without going forever deep on this, they're all linked, and that's part of it. And they've all lost trust, and they're going to all go down in many ways together. Then they have to follow that process for gaining it back, and it's going to take time. And it depends. The time it takes is based on the impact that was caused, right? So you can build trust pretty fast if you accidentally did something quickly and it didn't have a big injury. You do a massive injurious thing, that takes more time. Now do a massive injurious thing, have another three, whatever called the jet go down. Now have another jet go down. It's like you did all boom, boom, boom. You got even a bigger hill to climb because you've kind of exacerbated it.
Yeah. Chris is asking in the chat. He says, "How do you get past when someone has broken trust? Children, for example, or a colleague, and you don't have the luxury of not working with them in the future." And I know you spoke a minute ago or earlier about how you started explaining your mistakes to your daughter as a way for that. But speak to Chris's question there.
Well, this is a long consulting question in a way. And let me just start with, first of all, Chris, I'm not saying you should just trust them again. So we can only do stuff about ourselves. So first of all, I want you to spend most of your time on you. That's what I want to. That's what I spend most of my time on, working on with leaders and organizations. Now, what you can do is start with that clarity mixed together, but especially clarity. Say, hey, here is what happens when you do that, so they actually understand. I mean, I'd have to listen to you and talk about the challenge here in several different ways. But there's several things you can do, but it often starts with clarity. Are we absolutely clear? And are we clear on the ramifications for if you do this or don't do this, right? So you're going to keep breaking trust. Don't get past broken trust if they keep breaking it. You hear what I'm saying? So people think, I just want to get back from, I just want to trust them again. It would be so fun for me if I could. You can't trust them again. They're still doing stupid stuff, right? Okay, so you got to trust that they'll do stupid stuff. But clarity can win. I'll try to pull a simple example. Okay, so with my kids, my daughters, when they were younger, they turns out we didn't have the same picture of what a clean room looked like. So I said, okay, here, I'm not here to embitter you. I'm not here to make you be perfect. You're a kid. So here's what a clean room looks like to me. All it means is two things. You don't have to have the perfect, the dresser perfect. You don't have to have this perfect, that perfect. All you have to do, two things: a bed made and no clothes on the floor. And just so you know what that looks like, because it seems like we're not sure what a bed made looks like, I'm going to make the bed. Just looks like this. This is the top, okay? And clothes off the floor looks like this. They either go in the dirty clothes or they're hung up. So there's no clothes. See? That's clear, right? Okay, we're clear. Now, here's the ramification of that. If you do it, you get this. Whatever you could say, ice cream or nothing. I mean, you don't have to, but you could say this. If you don't do it, you get this. And this is You don't get to go with your friends. You don't get to whatever. You don't get, whatever. And we're absolutely clear-headed. Okay, I'm clear, Dad. Okay, you know what happens? When they don't have it clean, you walk, oh, I don't have it clean. Yeah, I don't get ice cream. Or they already know ahead of time. And they're, so that's the one way to get past it, I guess, one way. And Chris, there's so much more to this. This is such a very good, important, valid question that we have to deal with all the time. But that's, in a short time here, that's one way, is getting absolutely clear about the impact of it.
Yeah. While we're in this, I've got. Can we keep you on just for a few more minutes? I wanted to go into this, and it looks like our attendees are sticking around. So I just really briefly want to get into this idea of who do we trust as people doing business with each other. And there's a brand survey that was done early 2020 by Morning Consult, and they let's just pull it up the slide, and we'll talk to this on the other side here. Whoops, I'm showing the wrong one. Sorry about that. We know about those pillars. Okay, I got it. And one more. There we go. Okay, so let's get our pictures out of the way so that we can. There we go. Yep. So these are the most trusted brands by this company, Morning Consult. It was published in January 2020, and it's the first time they ever did this. They're an online research and digital brand, but they set a benchmark for gauging brand trust and outlines is how the results are based on the largest study of its kind to date, with 16,700 interviews per brand for nearly 2,000 brands. And they relied on Fortune 500 companies to understand consumer perceptions and transform that knowledge into a competitive advantage. Right up your alley. But I was really surprised when I saw this, that the United States Postal Service ranks number one. Now, remember, these are not companies, they're brands. So you have somebody like Tide, which is Procter & Gamble. Dove is I
soap, not chocolate, right?
Right.
That's P&G. That's a Procter & Gamble. Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, my quick phrase here, I'd line up against the 8 pillars, and there's some things there. But let me just say something. I don't know. We'd have to look at how the questions were asked, okay? But if it's trust, remember, you can be trusted for certain things. Like I might trust Tiger Woods to play golf better than many, and still not let him take my wife on a date, right? So so you've got United States Postal Service. That's a very strong brand in many ways, and trusted in many ways. But I don't think you would say, I'm going to trust them to have the shortest, quickest service, right? So the fastest service, the most kind service, or whatever. But if you look at these brands, and there's different reasons for any of them, but in strength, one of the biggest things we're looking for in brands is consistency. Consistency. So when's the last time the U.S. Postal Service has changed? You see some people, let's take Canadian Pacific Railways. I mean, they've changed their little symbol how many times, from a beaver to this to CP to whatever. I mean, that United States Postal Service, I'd like to know when the last time they changed that look, even the feel, the color, the whatever. I mean, it's a strong brand because they've stayed consistent. Chick-fil-A, and this is an interesting example. I think this would be interesting for people, that I'm not trying to go off the rails, but all of these brands that I'm looking at here are consistent in some way, and several of them are consistent in many ways. Okay. And I talk about Google. I talk about Hershey, that same look, the same feel. You know exactly what you're going to get. Do you think there's better chocolate out there? Undeniably. Go you can get more expensive chocolate. You can get better, whatever, but you can't get it more trusted. It's the same every time. It looks the same, tastes the same, same with M&Ms. But Chick-fil-A, here's something interesting for everybody. They're winning on the competency pillar. The input-output pillar. Their training program is unbelievable. In fact, I just interviewed last week the guy that started Ritz-Carlton, Schulte, who basically is the guy that trained them to do My Pleasure, right? So what I think is interesting about Chick-fil-A is, first of all, let's just take one brand. I could talk to each of these, so I'm getting excited here, and my mind went everywhere, right? But let me just talk about Chick-fil-A for a second. there's all kinds of different views about the conservative, not conservative, whatever. I'll tell you why they're winning. First of all, they're winning big. If you take franchises right now, food franchises, average per store revenue of a Taco Bell is 460 million, 460,000 a year. Average per store revenue of a KFC is a 1.1 million a year. Go up the food chain to Burger King, 1.5 million a year. Now you get the two big ones right now. Two big ones, actually, Panera and McDonald's. Average per store revenue is 2.5 million globally, except for one place, and they don't work on Sundays, and they work less hours per week. Chick-fil-A's average per store revenue is $4.4 million. And even as even as their CEO says, it is just chicken. It's just chicken. It's not laced in crack like people think. It's just chicken, right? So, this is how are they winning? They're winning on the feeling they create. And in fact, by the way, they pay the same basically on the front line, these kids that are, minimum wage as McDonald's. What's different? The difference is the kids didn't just get spit out of the womb saying my pleasure. They got trained. Or, and so they train them how to keep a clean bathroom and how to say my pleasure and how to do these things. And the whole experience is different. And in fact, what many people have said in a survey is basically moms will say, why'd you go to Chick-fil-A over McDonald's? It wasn't about the chicken. Yeah, they got good chicken. Fine. It's because I don't feel dirty when I go to Chick-fil-A with my kids instead of McDonald's or wherever. So the training, this competency pillar is winning for that one. The brand is strong. There's different reasons brands are strong, but what the main reason is consistency in some way. So in Chick-fil-A on that, when I looked at it, it's Chick-fil-A is winning because of I don't know if their look is, it's the feel, the brand feel.
Right.
Yeah. Hershey's, since 18 whatever, that's the same. If you go back to in Pennsylvania, Hershey, Pennsylvania, and you go see, that's the same Hershey. It looked the same chocolate, the same taste. You could eat a Hershey bar from 100 years ago. It tastes the same. It looks the same, the same look and feel. So you just, in some way, if you want a strong brand, and you know this well as an expert branding wise, you got to have consistency in some way. And the more consistency you have, the better. Look, feel, all kinds of.
Yeah, and we used to say whether it was message or a look or something like just when you're getting tired of it as an owner of that business, that's when it's working. So just you've got to resist to change that because that's it. The questions they asked, by the way, and I thought it was in that little blurb there, was which of these brands, and they put in front of them, do you trust a lot? And the word was a lot.
Okay.
So it's very colloquial in terms of the delivery of those questions. But one of the things that they said, in that particular report was that the levels of general distrust are high in America more than other places in the world. There was three things they said, and one was distrust is having an impact on everything that we do, big and small. He says they also realize this is no surprise. Most don't trust the news, and few find it easy to determine what is factual. And then they said distrust is particularly potent when concerning institutions and concentrations of power. So, looking at the flip of that distrust, I'm going to pull up another slide because you talk specifically about how trust can hit the bottom line. And this is a branding survey that is done every year by Interbrand. They've been doing it for 25 years. When I was in the business, this was it. And the difference is, by the way, Dove is Unilever, Tide is P&G. And,
right.
So a lot of those people who go out and buy Dove or Tide, they don't necessarily know I'm buying Unilever. That relationship's with the brand. So this is a little different when we're talking brand value because it's really company value.
I want to say something before you pull it up. Before you forget, institutional trust is down drastically. Did I say this before? I was thinking it earlier today.
No.
Okay, so one of the findings in the research, as long as we're touching on the research, institutional trust is down steeply. So if you think back from before Watergate, 80% of Americans trusted government to do what's right. Now it's less than 7%. Media trust was much higher. Than we had the Fairness Act of Reagan. You had all these things happen where there wasn't the accountability. And even, by the way, same token, there was the one that Clinton put through. So there's all of a sudden, not just because of them. I'm just saying that set the stage for media trust is very, very, very low. But institutional trust. So think of anything. Think of schools. I mean, charter schools have gone up. Private schools have gone up. Homeschooling has gone up because there's low trust in education as an institution. Churches, the 80% of Americans say they believe in God, and yet there's nothing that would show it from a metric of going to worship, giving toward a church or nonprofit or worship place of worship, attending a Bible study or whatever you want to say. It's like that's all down steeply. So food, same thing. I want to trust my food is grown right there. I don't trust the big grocer. So big institutional trust is down steeply, and that goes right to government as well. That's just I don't know if I was going to share something around what you said around media or institutional trust, but it's down enormously, especially in government and media.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So what this is, let's put this up. So I'll position us back down here. So most valuable brands. This is, I didn't put up the dollar figure, but this is based on what if you were going to sell that brand, what is it worth without anything attached to it, meaning factories, et cetera. Yeah. So one of the things I highlight in yellow there is Amazon and Google are the only two that appear on the most trusted that particular survey. And again, it's not a fair comparison. I even looked at Forbes. They do a ranking too, and it's pretty consistent with the value of the way they price it. And also Google and Amazon happen to swap there because they're second over here. But yeah. But you can say, and we don't need to speak to why these other brands don't necessarily appear on the most trusted. But I find that it's interesting that on that other slide, and I'll back out of that that other slide where we saw the brands, that the 3 out of the top 15 were FedEx, the Post Office, and UPS.
Yeah, and that's interesting.
Yeah, all delivery companies, and I think that's because, and again, that was pre-COVID, but we in this move to online business, we're buying more things. We see more, talk about consistency. We see more of the Post Office. We see more of the UPS and FedEx at our doorsteps. So.
Well, I think that's part of it. It's in front of you. Part of that is, unless we did them all in one study and asked the same way, I will tell you back to what you said a long time ago that I believe, and that's back to my grad work, is absolutely trust affects the bottom line. So any of those that were valued, they're also trusted in a way. The only way they hit any of those lists, there is a trust factor. And so because when trust went up, that was the driver of bottom line of people, clients, customers, engagement, net promoter score, everything was a trust issue, really, as far as driving impact in the bottom line. So
while we were doing this, David, I put up a poll and I asked, which of these companies do you trust most? And it was a random sampling. I put up Apple, mostly the FANG, Apple, Google, Facebook, Amazon, Tesla, SpaceX, Elon Musk, all kind of clumped into one. And 100% chose Apple of who they trust most. So, and I'm going to flip it up because, and then we'll wind this down. I'm going to put up the opposite of that poll. Which do they trust least? And we'll see how our attendees answer that question. And again, this is obviously a very low sample, but
put United in there for me.
I know I should have had that. Had that. Why didn't I think of that? Oh my goodness. So I want to put up the offer again. Oh no! Before you do that, because up there is the link. Tell us about the Trusted Leader Show. I saw that you had Sam Horn. Yeah. I love her to death.
Oh,
that was
amazing.
Great. Yeah, talk about branding and messaging. She's got it down, man.
She's amazing. We've had some great guests. Trusted Leader Show. People have been asking me for a long time to do this. I was traveling so much, a couple hundred times a year. We finally decided to do it. It lines really well with the new book, Trusted Leader. I've been interviewing some amazing people. Horst Schulze, the founder of the Ritz-Carlton, and now an even more elite hotel group around the world, Capella. They just won top hotel in the world in India, or resort, or not in Bali, I think. The founder of Steiner Yankees, New York Yankees, the biggest sports memorabilia agent and memorabilia guy in the country, at least. Really fascinating. Some just a really amazing people, entrepreneurs, leaders. I get one of the guys that's really surprisingly fun. Justin Flum was just he had more eyeballs on his Facebook the week before the election than Trump or Fox News. And he has, like, in 6 months, he had 4 billion eyeballs on his Facebook channel, which is just kind of fascinating. How did he do that? How did he connect? I mean, here's a pretty young guy that made a big pivot, and all of a sudden his advertising checks that he's getting are massive. So, there's some interesting people. That one guy climbed 500 mountain peaks from Nepal to almost every continent, I think. But basically, I'm just looking at trust. I believe in our research. I'm looking at how do you be a trusted leader? How do you increase trust in, whether it's in in leadership, in marketing, in innovation, in education. Just interviewed Mark Victor Hansen last week. He's Chicken Soup series, 500 million books sold. He's even he's interviewed. He's written about 100 and some other books, other than the being part owner of the 456 Chicken Soup books. Actually, the author of the most books in the world, other than the Bible, I think. So, wow. He's I think he's the #1 global author, even over J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter, I'm pretty sure. So it's just interesting. I learn every day, and it's been really fun and fascinating. And that's been a really fun thing. Our team has been leading the charge, and I get to sit with someone really cool and hear about how do we keep building trust? What does that mean now?
Yeah, absolutely. I put up in the sidebar once again. You've created a special link for us, which if you click on that link in the sidebar, click for free access and bonuses. There's a webinar. There's research. So what do people are going to get when they go to that site your team put together for us?
Yeah, so one of the things they're going to get access to a whole bunch of things. But one of the things they get is, I think, not just access, they get the whole masterclass, which used to be, about $1,000 a person. They could, get it. All you got to do is buy one book and send us the receipt to show they bought it. And they get, it's got 72 videos tactics of how you can build trust, each of the eight pillars, a whole really cool course, and just a whole lot more. They put a bunch of stuff together. They said they want this to be a brainer to get this book and to get equipped to build trust in their brand, leadership, organization as fast as they can. So that's all there. It's all free just for this time up until the book launch for you and just certain people. So you've got that. Make sure you put Journeys on the end of it. And we're set And if you're watching this on the YouTube and it's still before the book comes out, which is March 30th, 2021, click the link down below, and you'll be able to get those bonuses for being on the Journeys webcast or watching the replay for sure. Wow, there's so many things. I mean, all my notes are still going. I use these cards. But, we've already kept you long. I'm sure Lisa, who I've never met, but I'm sure she's wondering, where is David and your kids? Just before we go, you're in Minnesota. Where exactly? North of Minneapolis? It's kind of northeast of Minneapolis, St. Paul. It's off the St. Paul side. It's a beautiful area. I'm right now in my offices in White Bear Lake, and we live out in Grant, which is about 15 minutes away, just a little bit more outside the loop, out in the little hobby farm, and trying to raise kids that know how to work. So and what's the temperature like there? I mean, is there snow on the ground? What does it look like? There's snow. I could turn you can look outside my window if you're watching that way. There were snow this morning. That's plowed out. So wow. Okay. A lot of things have happened across the country. We're just ready for it a little more than some. I think up north by my parents last week was 47 below. Up on the actually that was a little closer to the Canadian border. So it got bitter. It was it's 20 to 30 below here for several days. And it was cold, but
It was good.
yeah, some people here say, no bad weather, just bad clothing. So you got to have the right clothing to make it. But
Right.
at some point, if you have any skin exposed, you definitely feel like some needles are hitting them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been fantastic. I mean, there's so many things we didn't get to that, maybe we'll have to do it again sometime. But before we go, do you have a little bit of wisdom, a nugget, a takeaway that people can do, just something very simple right now, whether it's cold or warm outside, and that they can do more about? I would put it on trusting yourself, because I think that's the gateway.
This is going to seem simple and almost trite, and it's harder than you think. And it is the way I lost 50 pounds in 5.5 months. It's that people have used this idea to triple sales in 90 days. This idea is that whatever you want to do, ask how until you will do something starting today or tomorrow. So you got how people stop too early, and so what they don't have is a hope. That final how gives hope. It gives clarity that leads to action. So, okay, how am I going to lose weight? I got to lose, I remember people tell me, eat less, exercise more. That's not clear enough for me, right? Okay, how am I going to take in less calories? Okay, I finally got, I'm not going to drink this one doctor said, if you'd stop drinking calories, you'd lose 30 to 50 pounds in a year or something. Most men in America would. So how am I going to do that? Okay, I'm not going to drink Coke anymore. How am I going to do that? I'm going to have Diet Coke or water or whatever. How until I'm going to apply it today or tomorrow. How am I going to sell more? How am I going to do that? I'm going to get a list. Well, how am I going to do that? I got to go with, a lot of people say, well, I'm going to start calling more people tomorrow, and they don't even have the list. Okay, you got to back up until you'll actually apply it today or tomorrow. So ask how until you can actually do something about it today or tomorrow. And maybe one bonus. It is the little things done consistently that make the biggest difference, not the big things. Little things done consistently that build trust. Little things done consistently that build sales. Little things done consistently that build marriages, friendships, brands. Little things done consistently. So get to your final hows, but then figure out a way of how am I going to do this consistently?
Yeah, I wanted to make a note, because I've noticed that several people have been coming on since about 3 o'clock. Because normally we hold this at 3 o'clock. So those of you who you did get late in the room, my guest is David Horsager. He's the author of the Trust Edge, and the new book is called Trusted Leader. I'm sorry that we're going to be winding it down, but you will get an email for the link of the replay, because this has been absolutely fantastic. A talk about the role of trust in business relationships, personal relationships, family, everything. Solid work there. There's a link in the sidebar right now. If you click it now, if you're on YouTube, it'll be below. It'll get you access to a whole bunch of David's work, his research, and a masterclass that used to cost $1,000. And all that's going to be available till the 30th of March, 2021. David, this has been fantastic. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day. I know but your passion for your work exudes through the screen to me. I can't wait till I can see you again. I can't wait till we can speak.
When are we going to ride? When are we going to ride?
Yeah, we got to go for a ride on the bike.
We got to go for a ride. You got an extra bike out there?
Oh, absolutely. We can always get one. Yes,
I'm there.
We'll get you a helmet and there and. Because talk about consistency. There's this thing in riding, and for the people riding on their nose, ATG, ATT. It's all the gear, all the time. Consistency, because motorcycles can be risky, but as long as you wear the protective gear, you're setting yourself up better to trust yourself, I think, and trust that you might not get hurt if you do have a little fall or something like that.
Sure.
I'm going to play a little quick closing video, and we'll talk in that and say goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Journeys Webcast. I'm Allan Karl, your host. Be sure to tune us in every Monday. The time changes depending on where we are in the world. This is Allan Karl, and where will your next journey take you?
David, thank you so much. This has been fun.
Thank you. Oh, Ben, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Okay. You have a good night. Say hi to the kids and your wife, and we'll be in touch very soon, I'm sure.
Thank you. Talk soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.